This is a free sample of the book, The Financial Red Pill, by Cairo Copeland. The first half of this book is posted right here on YouTube, free for everyone to listen to. If you like this content and want to hear or read the rest, or want to listen to it free of ads, visit reinventideal.com/finance. The book is available on Kindle, paperback, and Audible at reinventideal.com/finance.
Chapter 4. Avoiding the big financial fuck-ups. While these two financial statements will be of great help in getting to financial freedom, there's much more to the game than just reducing expenses below income and raising assets over liabilities. For some, it's going to be a lot harder than others. Some will not have a lot of opportunities to raise income. Others will have liabilities so great they can't wipe them off for years to come. In a moment's notice, poverty can come upon anyone. Not even all-star NBA players are safeguarded from poverty. The Chicago Bulls' Jason Caffey, who made an estimated $29 million during his 8-year NBA career, was in the bankruptcy court seeking protection from his creditors, among them the 7 women with whom he fathered 8 children. Sure, he brought that financial trouble on himself, but he only recognizes that now, in hindsight. You'd think that $29 million, well managed, should cover everything, but the problem is that it wasn't well managed. Thus, being aware of the pitfalls that cause poverty and knowing how to avoid them are 2 of your best ways to start your financial education. Suppose you are just starting out clean and haven't made any major financial decisions yet. This chapter will show you the big fuck-ups to avoid that could otherwise ruin your life financially. There are 12 things that if you don't do them, your chances of ending up in poverty decrease dramatically. They are: don't drop out of high school, don't commit crimes, don't have kids out of wedlock, don't get a student loan, don't rack up credit card debt, don't get married early, don't do drugs, even the legal ones, don't buy a big house, don't go without insurance, don't pursue a worthless degree or foolish career pursuits, don't neglect caring for yourself, and don't skip out on taxes. None of this is to shit on anyone that has already done one or more of these. This book is for the OSOM to help him, not to further shit on him. If you've done any of these, this book will still be able to help you. But for those of you that have not, or if you've done a few, but still find a lot of things you haven't done on this list, let the following serve as a reminder why to continue not doing them. 1. Don't drop out of high school. Yes, I completely agree with you. High school is filled with completely worthless shit you'll never need to know nor use in your life. History and science? I mean, come on. Is any of that going to legitimately put food on your plate? Can you go to McDonald's and tell them the formula for thermite and get a cheeseburger in return? Of course not. Yes, I understand there are cliques, bullies, know-nothing teachers, and worst of all, class projects. These class projects are definitely devised by teachers just to fuck with you and make you spend money, no doubt. And for fuck's sakes, when in class, we can't even piss. But toughing it out and staying in school shows the world one thing: that you were able to do something difficult, discomforting, and regurgitate enough bullshit to make a passing grade. Not having this documented by a diploma allows the world to believe that you're just lazy and stupid. Being a young person, many people will think this already. Don't give them a reason to justify their thinking. And if you've already dropped out, go get your GED right away. No one ever asks to see your report cards from high school. They just want to know that you actually got it done. An estimation of lost earnings and expense due to dropping out of high school: $260,000 in lost earnings and 4% higher unemployment. 2. Don't commit crimes. Quite often, the man that's smart enough to realize he should read a book like this is a man that's also smart enough to know that murder and theft is wrong. I'm not going to waste your time lecturing you about those. What I am going to talk about are things that are normally overlooked: piracy and fights. Why pay when it's free? Piracy allows you to watch movies and TV shows for free. But if you do a Google search on piracy arrests, you'll see why you never want to participate in this activity again. If you're going to do it, at least use a VPN proxy. But do you really have to go through all the expense and trouble to pirate a movie that way when it was really cheaper just to buy it on demand? Also, in male genetics, there is a biological drive to stand up for yourself, even when the smallest of insults is thrown your way. And sometimes, these things escalate because the other guy has the same drive as well, and possibly to an even more intense degree. Don't. Just don't. The risk of jail time and a criminal record is not worth the small satisfaction that comes from giving a jerk a well-deserved bloody lip. While that may make logical sense, it does nothing to reduce your anger or satisfy your impulse. Here's what might. And while that may make logical sense, it does nothing to reduce your anger or satisfy your impulse. Here's what might, though. Consider who has more to lose. The losers that provoke you to start fights do so because their lives are already ruined. Thus, they have nothing to lose. But you, who have no criminal record, have a lot to lose. You may have a respectable job that could be lost over it. You may have assets to your name that prosecutors will foam at the mouth over while thinking about civil forfeiture. Don't lose it over a few good punches. The tougher, stronger, and bigger man is the one that can walk away from a fight that he knows he could easily win. Moneycrashers.com made the most comprehensive report on the hidden costs of committing a crime. And it's more than just lost earnings while incarcerated. There's also defense attorney fees, court costs, future employment denial, housing denial, probation costs, time wasted doing community service, and a social stigma. Estimation of lost earnings and expense due to a criminal record, $2 million over a lifetime. Number 3. Don't have kids out of wedlock. One of the greatest causes of misery in the world is unwanted children and unplanned pregnancies. Sounds harsh, since most will say that children are always a blessing, but the truth is that they are only a wonderful addition to a stable life when they are planned for. The misery an illegitimate child can cause is not just for you in terms of expense and child support and people looking at you with a presumption of irresponsibility, but also for the child. Remember, a child is its own sentient being that has needs it can't fulfill on its own. And when those needs cannot be met, when it goes through life believing it is unloved, when this child does not receive the discipline it must have, this child will grow up to wreak havoc on society. For proof, look at the birth rates for the poorest countries in the world. For a financial analysis, it is estimated that a child today will rack up a total bill of $233,000, covering everything from the hospital bill at birth to graduation fees. But the expense doesn't stop there. First, the costs that go into that $233,000 will rise over the 18 years due to inflation. More like $750,000 over a lifetime. Also, many parents find themselves still supporting their children well into adulthood. This was money that could have been spent compounding in a mutual fund to provide financial freedom early on. There's more loss that a child can create as well. For at least the first 12 years of their lives, they must be supervised. If they are not, and something happens to them, you will be held responsible as their parent and possibly face charges of child neglect. So this mandate for supervision may cause you to miss out on work and work opportunities, not to mention fun with friends. And for this reason, you must never allow any woman you sleep with to determine what protection is used. Always wrap it before you tap it, even if you're exclusive. You should be doing this already in order to protect yourself from STIs. But you must never trust a woman who tells you everything is okay because she's on the pill. The truth is, it only takes one little misstep, such as being late on the dosage schedule, to make the pill ineffective. Also, anytime you use a condom, flush it down the toilet when done with it. There have been many reports of them being dragged out of the trash for their sperm in an attempt by the woman to inseminate herself and tie down the man to her life. I don't know how true or possible this is, but I say it isn't at all worth the risk. Beware. There is a large percentage of the female population that are out to trick you into getting her pregnant. Don't believe me? Google, "How do I trick my boyfriend into getting me pregnant?" The search will return thousands of results. It wouldn't be able to, if there weren't enough people interested in doing this. On the Wendy Williams show, the hosts asked the audience if it was okay to trick a man into getting a woman pregnant. The all-female audience cheered with approval. The only options you have are abstinence, condoms, and vasectomy. The first one is unrealistic. The second is pretty good. The third is a definite fix and totally reversible. Whichever you choose, the safest bet is to always assume that they are not on birth control. Number 4, don't take on student loans. Later in this book, I'll rip into the education industry and college in particular for the scam that it is. But suppose you are already in it, or your parents are forcing you to go and giving you no say in the matter. You can save yourself a lot of time, a lot of money, and trouble by having a good argument against it. And one good argument is how it will be paid for. The student loan game has changed dramatically. The cost of college always goes up, and loans are replacing grants, which is a bad idea. Always look for a grant first. Academic institutions are only worth attending if you can get someone else to pay for it. Tragically, it has become common practice now for the newly admitted to acquire student loans. This debt is extremely tough to get rid of once it's amassed, and it's very profitable for the sharks doing the lending. In 2005, lenders persuaded legislators to make private loans impossible to shake. You can't even declare bankruptcy. Scholarships are always better than loans. Check out these websites if you qualify for one: brokescholar.com and fastweb.com. Whatever you do, don't ask the advice of a college financial aid officer. Federal and state regulators are investigating the possibility, and frankly the likelihood, that private lenders are buying college financial aid officers, much like the way a lobbyist buys a politician. They buy them gifts, and the aid officers then add the lenders to the preferred lender list. Consumer advocates have found that some aid officers are misleading students into taking out more expensive private loans when the borrowers are eligible for lower-rate federal loans. Studies even show that more than half of these student debtors take out private loans without even exhausting federal resources, and 24% receive no federal aid at all. TheSimpleDollar.com exposed many hidden costs of student loans. One of them is they may end up forcing you to wait longer to buy a house, because your ability to qualify for a home loan is based on your debt-to-income ratio. Student debt is going to take its toll on that. Waiting longer to buy a home means you'll be carrying debt later and later into your life. The bottom line is that if you default on a mortgage, you can give back the house. But if you default on a student loan, you can't give back your degree. Number 5, don't rack up credit card debt. When I first got into college, I felt like a little baby seal stuck on a melting iceberg, surrounded by great white sharks. There were so many of them mailing me letters, calling my cell phone, no idea how they got my number, and clogging up my email inbox, wanting me to sign up for credit cards. And they were more aggressive than any other salesperson I've ever seen. Come and get your credit card. You don't even need a job. Nowadays, there is legislation that keeps these sharks off campuses, but they've made a fortune preying on vulnerable youngsters and are finding new ways to get their little baby seal victims every day. The overwhelming temptation to get a credit card is understandable. They're convenient, they're a good thing to have in case of some emergencies, and they're seemingly indispensable. You'll hear all this from the same sharks that make the $5,000 credit limit sound like they're giving you $5,000 for free. Whenever something seems too good to be true, it often is. While they push the positives, there are negatives they don't tell you about, like universal default penalties. Lenders and credit card companies make their money on people's failures. When you sign up for one of these, you're putting a target on your back, because the company will keep a keen eye on your timeliness. If you have more than one credit card, and you're late on a payment with one of them, the interest rates on both of them will go up, because the company of the one that you paid for on time will have reason not to trust you. Interest rates are often hidden. One of the tricky things these predators do is heavily boast about their low introductory rates. It seems like a bargain, but the problem is that over a period of usage, the rates go up astronomically without cause. And the reason why was hidden in the microscopic fine print that you may not have read. Most rates are even tied to the prime rate, which is one that can rise suddenly. Bait and switch offers. Once you have one card, other companies will send you junk mail advertising low interest, and even if you're not approved, you'll be issued another. That's the trick. It's written in microscopic print. So you sign up and switch, but the card you thought you signed up for, you weren't approved for, and you don't get it. Instead, you get another one with high interest. By the time the damn thing arrives, they hope you've forgotten what rate you were getting into, or thought you were getting into. And most times people do, until that first bill arrives. Doing the minimum payment will take about 35 years or more to repay. Back in the old days, the minimum monthly payment was around 5%. This wasn't good enough for the credit card issuers, because people ended up paying their balances fast, and the cost of that 5% made people think twice about using their cards on big-ticket items. So they cut down the size of the minimum to 2%. It became easier to splurge and indulge yourself because you don't have to pay so much each month. But the thing people do not foresee is that it adds up to thousands in interest, and the period of paying it back multiplies from months to years, sometimes even decades. There is no federal limit on late payment charges. No other industry in the world could get away with this. Prior to the 1996 Smiley versus Citibank court case, there was a limit. But Citibank has the money to buy the best lawyers to win their cases for them. So the limit law went the way of the dodo. And don't forget, when you're late, your APR goes up too. There is no federal limit on interest rates either. At the time of writing this book, interest rates on mortgages are low. Interest rates on car loans are pretty low too. How is it possible for interest rates on credit cards to be so ridiculously high? Because there's no all-encompassing federal law to set a limit. The interest rate limit laws are different in each state, and look at which states the big credit card companies reside in. New Hampshire, which has no cap, Virginia, South Dakota, Utah, Delaware, all of which have no cap, and Arizona, which has a 36% cap. Isn't that convenient? They're all in states with no caps or high caps. The fine print is not printed in understandable English. The way that they write the fine print is specifically intended to frustrate and confuse the skeptical consumer reading it. You'll need 4 hours and a team of lawyers to understand it. Also, all those little goodies they promised you, like purchase protections, warranty coverage, and travel discounts, they all might end when your introductory rate ends, and they can get away with it because they hide it in the fine print. So with all of these hidden dangers and negative features, why would anyone want one of these little wallet parasites? 2 reasons. One is instant gratification, and the other is that it is a good way to build up credit, but only if you do it right, which I will show you how in the upcoming chapter on credit cards. Number 6, don't get married early. It is important to know the fiscal situation of the person you're marrying. I don't mean just bad credit spouses or gold diggers, but marrying early in general could be a financial disaster for you as well. By marrying early, I'm talking about under the age of 30, because 30s is when everyone is likely to be all done with college and set in their chosen career, have their shit together, so to speak. Let's look at the emotional aspect of this first. Psychotherapist Tina B. Tessina believes that romance has been blown out of proportion. Many college students' brains haven't finished maturing yet, she explains. Unfortunately, many couples part because they feel as though they've grown apart. The spouses might even start to say to each other, "You're not the person I married anymore." This happens because the reasons you fell for them in the beginning, intelligence, sense of humor, sexiness, don't measure up to trash not being taken out or a stack of dirty dishes. And anything to do with physical attraction doesn't last for long. Problems you didn't expect arise from nowhere. Household responsibilities, missing out on the fun of being young, sacrificing educational endeavors, and then not being able to get good jobs because of that limited education will certainly spark fights. And don't even think about kids. While the things that attracted you to each other enough to get married fade away, you end up despising each other and getting divorced. The expensive mess a divorce can be is what takes a toll on you because you don't have much to begin with. With a portion of the low income from the earlier working days going to alimony, it becomes almost impossible to accumulate assets and savings. Further, at a young age, under 30, you haven't experienced big financial setbacks. You haven't had to pay for a funeral yet. You likely haven't had a large medical expense. You haven't had to get a lot of heavy dental work done. A lack of experience with large expenses will delude one to believe that they can afford extravagant wastes, like a big fancy wedding or a honeymoon. And when one of these large expenses hits the couple unexpectedly, it inspires fights about money, hurting the marital fabric. Early marriage is a key predictor of later divorce. Nearly half of people who marry under 30 end up divorced. It's only 24% for people who marry after age 30. Figures released last year from the National Center for Health Statistics found nearly half of marriages in which the bride is under 30 ends in separation or divorce within 10 years. For brides 30 years and older, half as many marriages break up. And I don't think we need to get into what a financial mess divorce can be. Number 7, don't do drugs, even the legal ones. I'm not going to waste your time by talking about the illegal drugs like pot, crack, and heroin. I'm pretty sure you have no interest in poisons that make your body gross, your nose bleed, and suck all your money out of the bank. Instead, I'd rather focus on the legal ones. What are these legal drugs? Or a better question to ask, what constitutes a drug? The answer, anything that makes you feel okay with being bored. South Park said it best with one episode, My Future Self and Me. What happens is the main character, Stan, meets his supposed future self, who traveled back in time to warn him not to do drugs. Stan's future self dresses like a homeless man and speaks very stupidly. Everyone in the town makes fun of Stan's future self, and by effect, also makes fun of Stan. But then comes a twist in the storyline. Stan's future self is a fake. Stan finds out that his future self is just an actor his parents hired to motivate him not to do drugs. When his father confesses this to him, he gives us the best reason to avoid drugs. They make you okay with being bored. Instead of being bored, you should be using that time to do something meaningful or learn a new skill. So what are these drugs? Alcohol, cigarettes, video games, and porn. Alcohol has a way of tricking you into thinking you can handle it. For all the money you pay for it, what it gives back to you is painful headaches the next morning, full-blown sickness, long-term deterioration of health, jail, DUIs, domestic violence, and fights. Sure, it's fun to get drunk and even feels good, but the next morning sure doesn't. Even if you like who you wake up next to, you yourself will not be feeling sexy. And more often, you won't like who you wake up next to. Just better hope you remembered what was written earlier about protection. You'll wish you had used a full-body condom as well. Cigarettes are an interesting one. All the smoking deaths that occur each year, hundreds of thousands. Yet the only thing anyone ever bitches about is vaping, maybe 10 deaths per year. But I would also include vaping in this one as well. Set aside the health effects of smoking, they are well known. Set aside the health effects of vaping, they're currently unknown. What do we have from each of these two habits? A large expense with little, short-lived satisfaction. Take cigarettes, for example. The average smoker does a pack a day, and that costs about $7 a day on average. That's $2,555 a year. Smoke for 20 years, and that's $51,100. Doesn't seem like a lot of money, perhaps, but the right question to ask is, what could that money have been doing instead of being flushed down the drain on cigarettes? If the $2,555 each year was invested in a mutual fund for the 20 years, assuming a modest 7% annual average return, that money would have grown to $104,000. You can throw $50,000 away over 20 years, or you can double it over 20 years. The choice is yours. By the way, the market for mutual funds usually has a higher annual average return than 7%, more like 10%. Let's use the same logic on vaping. Looking at the popular vaping device, Blue, the packs cost $10 a pop and last for about 1 day. That's $3,650 a year, or $73,000 over 20 years of vaping. Using the same method of investing in a mutual fund with 7% growth, that money would have doubled to $149,000. Again, the usual annual average for mutual funds is 10%, so it could be even more. Moving on to porn, which is a drug for certain. The main reason we use pornography is not entirely because we like looking at naked women. That's only coincidental. What makes it addictive is how it takes your mind completely off of any problems you currently have in your life. It is the perfect relief for emotional pain. Your mind is too busy being aroused to think about any pain. So it also prevents you from solving any problems in your life as well. You may have noticed a feeling of lethargy in your thinking in periods of prolonged porn use. That's because porn gives rewards to your brain without you doing anything to earn those rewards. It requires no effort to watch porn. Yet the rewards pathways in the brain are firing up like you just won the lottery. This teaches your brain that hard work doesn't have to be done for the reward of feeling good. Therefore, don't do any hard work or anything that can yield a greater reward than the point-in-time pleasure of a mere orgasm. The real danger of this drug is its ability to consume time. If someone is merely rubbing one out real quick, just watching one scene that isn't all that hardcore, they don't have much of a problem. But the guy that's doing 5-hour marathons of watching porn daily definitely has a problem. He's often not aware of it though, because the only person he's hurting is himself. Each scene he watches loses a bit of its ability to arouse him with each time he watches it. Thus, he constantly needs to seek out more, which is where the time consumption is born. There are some that have become so overexposed to porn that they must watch more twisted scenes in order to be aroused. Some need to resort to gay porn to get aroused because the neurons associated with sexual arousal are burned out. They no longer get erections from straight porn. But seeing the erections in gay porn triggers mirror neurons that help the addict get their own. Worst of all, some addicts even need child porn to get the effect they once got. The same can be said of watching a lot of TV, especially reality TV, binging on Netflix, being glued to video games, or religiously following sports to the point where it encompasses your entire life. These things were made to pass time away, and that's no different from pissing time away. These things teach you to sit on the sidelines, where all you can do is watch. How often do you find yourself yelling at the TV? Not just when watching sports, but when a character in a show does something really stupid. It slowly and subtly gets you to accept that things will happen with which you can do nothing about. You have no choice but to sit there and accept it, continuing through as a spectator of your own life and what it throws at you. Further, TV shows and video games today aren't just made by screenwriters and developers, respectively. They're also constructed by neurological engineers that consult the producers in a manner that gets the viewer or player mentally addicted. Every episode and level are made to leave you partially satisfied, yet craving more. Number 8. Don't buy a big house. Much more detail about home ownership will be discussed in the chapter on hacking your housing. But one thing that just cannot wait is this rule. Your housing is to be for the bare minimum functionality. That means be realistic with how much space you really need. Everyone needs a bedroom and a bathroom. But 4 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms? Maybe not when you're first starting out living on your own. Every house needs a kitchen, but an enormous dining room to go with it? Come on, how often do you entertain guests? And do you really do a lot of living in the living room? Do you do a lot of studying to warrant a study? A garage can be very beneficial and useful, especially a big one. It can keep your car safe during ferocious storms and the dreaded pollen season, not to mention store the tool chest that every man needs. But do you really need a screened-in patio? Be realistic with what things are functionally useful and essential versus things that are just nice to have. Ask yourself how often you will actually use the extra rooms. A lot of people, with all the extra space, only bought it to show off but rarely get the opportunity to. And when they notice the extra space going unused for too long, they end up buying more shit they don't need just to fill it. Many homeowners report never even using some of the rooms in their house. The primary offender is the dining room. Does any family ever have dinner together again like in the old TV shows? Does any person really eat while doing nothing else? Most often, it's done in front of the TV, which is in another room. The additional space is additional square footage. The amount of square footage a house has is what insurance companies use to justify higher insurance premiums. It is what governments use to justify higher property taxes. And it's just overall more space to increase the potential for problems. For a lot of young guys, The bachelor pad needs only a kitchen, a bedroom, and a bathroom. Basically a studio apartment. Understand that a home needs to only serve functional purposes for living and is never needed for impressing. This will save you a ton of money early on. Number 9. Don't go without insurance. As a young person, you will be tempted to believe that you can do without health, disability, and even auto insurance. You figure you're young, healthy, and invincible, and you drive the speed limit so there's nothing to worry about. After all, insurance exists for just in case shit happens. But when shit doesn't happen, you don't get your money back. When shit does happen, the claim rarely covers the entire cost because there are deductibles, which is just the amount you must pay first in order to get a dime from the insurance company. So you feel you're pissing away a monthly payment for a service that doesn't really service you. But don't let this mindset taint your thinking. The first thing they ask when you're in the emergency room, before you're asked the ever-important "where does it hurt?" question, is the more important "do you have insurance?" question. Health insurance will save you from a ruined life when a medical problem arises, and it doesn't even have to be a serious medical problem. If you're bit by an ant and have an allergic reaction to it, the bill for the emergency room can be over $5,000. I know from personal experience. And on that note, don't ever ride in an ambulance unless absolutely necessary. The trip will cost you a good $500, but a $30 Uber ride can take you the same distance and almost the exact same amount of time. With disability, it's purely statistics. You're far more likely to become injured and unable to work, as you currently are capable of, than you are to die prematurely. And being unable to support yourself through work is a miserable existence. Again, society doesn't care at all about men in poverty. Social Security disability payments are so small, they'd be laughable if they weren't so sad. In all states, it's the law to at least have liability coverage on auto insurance. So mostly everyone will have that. But many think, you know what, I'm an above average driver. I don't act like an idiot on the road, so I don't need collision and comprehensive coverage. There are 3 problems with this thinking. One is that everyone on the road thinks they're an above average driver, which statistically cannot be possible. For there to be an average, there must be at least 50% of the people out there that are relatively worse. 2 is that if you are above average, drive 5 miles under the speed limit, and have the best temper on the road, you can still get smashed. The problem may not be you, but the other people that have no business being on the road. The emotionally unstable idiot that just found out his wife was cheating on him is in the mood for road rage. The impatient asswipe that thinks it's still safe to cross an intersection 1 second after the light turns red. Or the prissy bitch that thinks the only purpose of mirrors in the car is to check her makeup. 3 is that one of these troublemakers could also be an uninsured motorist. Liability-only coverage won't get you in another vehicle and back on the road when you carry no collision coverage, and any one of these fools carries no basic coverage. You may think, well then I can sue them because they're breaking the law, which is true, but if they're not carrying any auto insurance, it's because they're flat broke, living on the margins of society, and there's nothing to be gained from suing them. Just pay the insurance bill. The peace of mind is worth the price. Number 10, don't pursue worthless degrees or foolish career pursuits. One of the biggest lies we're told about the world we were promised was that we could be anything we wanted to be. Our parents and teachers told us we could be astronauts, athletes, even President of the United States. Well, sorry to have to break this one to you, but the truth is, you can only successfully be something that meets 2 measures. 1, something you're good at, and 2, something that's in demand. Anything that doesn't fit in with both of those should not be pursued as a career or subject of study. It's merely a hobby and should be treated as such. That doesn't mean you can't study something that's in demand if you're not good at it. The reason you study is to get good at it, but you must have the legitimate desire to get good at it. The worst advice given to all youngsters is follow your passion. Being passionate about something is worthless, 1, if you're not good at it, and 2, if no one needs it from you. Suppose for a minute you're flying on a plane, first class, right up by the cockpit. Let's suppose the pilot and captain come stumbling out of it, puking up blood and fall on the floor to their deaths and the plane is now taking a nosedive at hundreds of miles an hour. The guy sitting next to you jumps up and runs to the controls. You follow him in and ask, "Are you a pilot?" And he says no. "But you know how to fly, right? You used to be a gunner in the Air Force. I mean, at least tell me you played a lot of flight simulation video games." Now the guy is irritated with you and tells you, "Look, buddy, I don't know who you're used to dealing with, but I'm a nice guy. I've dreamed of being in the cockpit my whole life. I used to pretend I was flying airplanes when I was a kid. Most importantly, I'm passionate about airplanes." Obviously, after some confusion, you'd shout back, "How the hell does any of that bullshit matter? We're going down and we're all going to die. Now, do you know what the hell you're doing or not?" And he retorts, "Why does that matter? What kind of self-centered ass are you? My passion means nothing to you? This is my childhood dream to be right here, right now. Do you know how many different airplanes I can name?" With him being such a demonstrably passionate person, do technical skills you can benefit from really matter? Why, yes, they do. You'd grab him by his throat and shove him against the wall of the cockpit and say with spit shooting out with each word, "No, they don't mean a damn thing to me, because as of right now, we need a pilot. Now get the hell out of here and find me someone that knows what they're doing." Every single day of your life is like this. You are that guy taking the wheel, despite not knowing what you're doing. And all the people on the plane are the rest of society. If you feel society seems to reject you, this is the reason. Why can't you get any respect? Because society is composed of people that are in need of specific things. We need people with skills, not just qualities. We need homes to live in, food to eat, and clothes to wear. You were born into the cockpit with no training on how to fly, but they sure as hell expect you to. Your task from the moment you came into this world was to service the needs of others. So you have a choice. You can learn these skills needed to perform the tasks that will meet the needs of others, or you can remain rejected. It's of no importance to those how kind, considerate, or honest you are. Bill Clinton was a liar, but he could do the job. Mel Gibson is a jerk, but he can do the job. But this all sounds so cruel and material-minded. What about being loving and friendly? Doesn't that matter too? Yes, it does. But you should already be that anyway. Just being courteous and respectful isn't enough, because that's an expectation people have of you by default. Do not follow your passion. Instead, bring it with you to everything you do. I mean, let's get real here. I'm passionate about Katy Perry's body, and if I follow that, I'll end up in jail. What we should be telling youngsters is bring it with you everywhere you go. It's better to develop the ability to do every task with enthusiasm than it is to only have it for tasks you prefer. Easier said than done, isn't it? Absolutely. But here's how you make it a little easier for you to boost your enthusiasm on tasks you don't like doing. Instead of looking at it as just working on something, think of it as working towards something. Each time you clock in at a job that you don't want to be at, remember the money that comes in for that shift and what you plan to put that money towards. Pursuing degrees in things you merely find to be personally interesting, as opposed to having real market value, will have you spending the rest of your life wishing you hadn't wasted the best opportunity years of your life. Useless degrees like liberal arts, gender studies, religious studies, cinema studies, art history, psychology, anthropology, acting, and performing arts will cost you the same price tag as a useful degree like cloud computing, medicine, engineering, but the jobs they qualify you for will come with a lower paycheck. Further, pursuing careers in areas that are not in demand, like teaching, and journalism, environmental conservation, farming, piloting, and politics, will have you waste a good portion of your life too. And by doing so, you waste very productive years and potential earnings. Number 11. Don't neglect caring for yourself. Many people are able to stay out of poverty through their working, productive years. But then, upon retirement, it ambushes them like an army of stormtroopers on unsuspecting Ewoks. What causes it? In old age, a new expense arises that didn't used to be a concern. That expense is healthcare. What happens is that during their working life, they stayed pretty sedentary at their jobs, sitting at a desk. But the work was still stressful, and they felt too tired to go to the gym afterwards. They went home and were too tired to cook, so they got fast food. They probably had other bad habits, like smoking, or they went out drinking with their friends. They gain weight, promising themselves they'll lose it each New Year's Eve, but never do. It finally catches up to them in old age. Young men today are particularly at risk with this one, They are taught fewer domestic skills growing up because their parents are from an era where the wife did all the cooking and cleaning, so they expected their son to marry a woman that would cook for him, and thus never taught him. But with the delay and decline in marriage, many men will spend nearly a decade not cooking for themselves. They'll just go out to eat, or worse, get fast food. There are other things in today's world that make men very susceptible to the sedentary life as well, such as video games, Netflix, 24/7 sports channels, and porn. Men could realistically spend all their non-working waking hours in front of a computer or a TV and be entertained, not getting any physical activity. Doing this for 40 years will compound into nearly irreversible negative health effects like a compromised immune system and unhealthy levels of excess fat. These things must be stopped in their tracks right away. Start with eating right. Do not get fast food. It's far too expensive, and not just in the immediate cost-to-purchase sense. The trouble it will cause later in life will stack up medical bills that eat up retirement accounts. There's a prevailing myth that healthy food is expensive, and it's absolute bullshit. The reason people don't eat healthy isn't because they can't afford it. It's because they're too lazy to cook a healthy meal. A 10-pound bag of raw chicken costs $20 at Sam's Club and will feed you for a week at the very least. Eating fast food for a week will add up to $100 if every meal is at the drive-thru. When eating healthy is made into a habit, it eventually becomes enjoyable. Start out small, 1 healthy meal a day, then do 2 healthy meals a day. You'll get to the point where you've made it so habitual that you end up liking it. And it tastes a lot better knowing that you save money now and a lot of money later on. On the physical activity, the gym needs to become your home away from home. Are you into sports? Is there a game on TV you'd really want to see? Last I saw, gyms have TVs in front of the treadmills. Watch the game while you're on one. When the body becomes inactive, blood flow starts to decrease. Blood is the motor oil that keeps the engine of the body alive. It delivers the important nutrients to the organs to maintain proper function. Resistance training and regular cardio will easily fix this problem. Fat people may be less likely to get kidnapped, but fit people are more likely to get help from a stranger when needed. Do not wait until you have time. The excuse that you do not have time is one that's hard to argue against now and will never be easier to argue against in the future. The sooner you start, no matter how small the effort, will compound into better health in the future. If you just pick up a dumbbell and do curls once a day, that's better than delaying until you have the time to start a full workout program. A common truth across many parts of life is that there is never the perfect time to start something, whether it be saving, investing, or exercising. The only time to start is right now. When you say you don't have time, that's really a lie. If you'd be given $1 million for completing a fitness program, you'd sure find a way to do it. What you're really saying is that it's not a priority. It's not a priority because you can't see the benefits from it up front. The first day at the gym may feel like nothing got accomplished because you don't see any changes. But there's actually $1 million on the line. The healthcare costs of being out of shape don't just affect you personally, but also everyone else around you. Health insurance providers use the rising rates of obesity as justification to jack up their premiums. Do you really want to dogpile onto that? Further, most health problems that eradicate retirement savings in old age could have been prevented by better eating and exercise habits during youth. It is estimated that out-of-shape people spend $2,700 more each year on healthcare costs. The study does not specify when those costs start to occur, but assume they begin at age 60 as they do for most people. That's $54,000 spent over 20 years, but also $54,000 not continuing to earn interest for you in savings or working hard for you in investments. Beyond the extra expense and loss of compounded interest, a lower body weight is correlated with fewer missed work days per year. Putting in more productivity will yield you more opportunities for better, higher paying work. As we've seen, the world is unfair in many senses financially, and is no different when it comes to this, because lower body weight individuals are also more likely to receive promotions and higher pay. The American Heart Association conducted a study that shows $2,500 in savings each year from healthcare costs. The study followed both healthy people and those who had been diagnosed with some kind of heart condition. It was suggested that they follow a routine of just 30 minutes of exercise activity a week. It wasn't just the fit people that benefited, but those that had underlying heart conditions reduced their risk of being hospitalized, and it took very little effort in the way of changing lifestyles. Health and wealth are closely related, as a hospital bill can dramatically dry up savings. In just a few small changes to your schedule, you can keep this monster creeping up the bridge from ever appearing in your life. Much of financial success is in preventing expensive failures. Get a gym membership right away. You don't need any of their expensive personal trainer packages. Just use Chris Gethin's free trainer for beginners on cagedmuscle.com as your guide. It comes with a list of the exercises and a schedule for doing them. It also has videos where he demonstrates doing them. Follow along with him through the schedule and you'll see the results. Another great tactic to keep you motivated and moving is to sign up for events before you're ready. These events could be competitions, Spartan races, warrior dashes, lifting events, bodybuilding shows, and obstacle courses. Whichever one you choose, just sign up for it before you're ready. That will motivate you to get ready. What also needs to be added to the list of self-care is good sleep. During sleep, the body regenerates its abilities to do the things it needs to do throughout the day, and lack of it will cause the mind to stress more easily. With a stressed mind, it's unable to functionally care for the rest of the body. Also, your appearance will be altered by a lack of sleep, so it's as important as showering or brushing your teeth. Number 12. Don't skip out on your taxes. Yes, I know that taxes are bullshit. I mean, there's a sum of money that you owe the government for maintaining civilization, like it would really crumble without your shred of dollar bills. They know what that correct sum is, but they don't tell you. They expect you to figure it out on your own. And if you make a mistake, they throw you in jail. Absolute bullshit. The system is 100% corrupt from top to bottom, but we can't change the system. Even Jesus Christ told the disciples to pay their taxes to a corrupt government, even while he himself told them it was corrupt. He wouldn't get a lot of preaching done if thrown in jail for something petty and stupid like that. This is important because when they come to collect delinquent taxes, they don't just come to collect the amount that you owe. They come for much more in penalties. Sometimes they'll even make you appear in court, forcing you to pay the needless and ridiculous lawyer fees and take time off work. The taxpayer money they piss away with this worthless procedure is probably greater than the amount you owe. So just pay the crooks what they want. Avoiding these 12 things won't make you rich, but they will give you a greater chance of steering clear of poverty. I'm convinced that someone working even a minimum wage job their whole career will be able to stay out of poverty by adhering to these 12 don'ts. A big part of winning in the world of finance is just not doing the wrong things. Warren Buffett himself says a large contribution to himself is avoiding bad deals. And billionaire money manager Howard Marks says that just focusing on avoiding the losers will allow the winners to take care of themselves. You wouldn't want to go against the advice of two successful billionaires when it comes to your financial life, now would you? What if you've made one of these mistakes? None of this chapter was to shit on anyone that's made one of these blunders and is currently suffering for it. If perhaps you've made one or multiple mistakes from this list, don't let that allow your mind to rule out the rest of the advice in this book as workable for you. A great story illustrates this point. A very rich client of mine, let's call him Joe, was a manager for several commercial real estate properties. His management company was in panic one day because one of their largest tenants, one that provided them with $100,000 a year in rents, was threatening to leave because panhandlers were constantly popping up on and around the properties. Everyone at the company was arguing and blaming each other for it. But Joe wasn't having any of this. He stood up and said, "Everyone shut the fuck up. I don't give a shit whose fault this is. What's our next move?" Finally, all the employees stopped arguing and started brainstorming on how to solve the problem and retain the client, which they later managed to do, all because Joe told them to forget the past and start focusing on the future. When I talked to him about his unique ability to unite people and get them to work together, he attributed it to the fact that he was a veteran of the Iraq War and completed 3 tours. After being in a war zone, he learned lessons that he could never forget. One of them was that when bombs are going off and bullets are flying, he didn't have the luxury of examining the past to determine whose fault the war was. He had only 2 options. 1, get in the fight and start taking out the enemy, or 2, watch more of your friends die. That was how he lived the rest of his life. Never did he look back at the past and dwell on regrets. He only looked at the problems of his life with a forward-thinking lens. In the same way, don't look back at your past and think, I took on way too much debt, or I chose a shitty degree, or I spent 6 figures on cigarettes. Just look forward and ask yourself, what's my next move?
Thank you for listening to this free sample of the book, The Financial Red Pill by Cairo Copeland. If you enjoyed it and want to hear or read the rest, or want to listen to it free of ads, visit reinventideal.com/finance. The book is available on Kindle, paperback, and Audible at reinventideal.com/finance.